Welcome back. If you're new to the channel, my name's Nathan, and I help people build the confidence to explore nature and become the best version of themselves through outdoor adventures. I'm really excited about this particular video because Peter Katz is a friend of mine. He's someone who I consider an OAF, and he was one of the first people that I thought I really need to interview somebody who shares similar values to me. And so I reached out to Peter and he agreed to do an interview. So without wasting anyone's time, let's get straight to the interview. Hey!
How's it going?
It's going great now that I connected.
But nice to see you, my friend.
Yeah, good to see you too.
And I like your camera setup. Looks great.
Oh, thanks. I got like a, what is this, a Yeti hanging above me? I got cameras behind me and I got one in front of me and some on the side here just for the fun of it. This is kind of exciting for me because I get to interview a friend of mine that has I've gotten to know over the years. I've worked with personally, and I've had the opportunity to not just listen to and play music, but play music alongside with him and even just learn at his feet. So I'm very excited about getting to interview Peter Katz. Peter is not just a Juno nominee, but he has put out, how many albums are you at right now?
Well, there's like 3 that have been banished. So I think there's like 5 that are consumable for the public, and then there's the early years.
The early years, yes.
Yeah.
And my understanding of I got to know the music before I got to know the person. I've often looked up to Peter, and so it's a real privilege and a treat to be able to interview a fellow OAF, someone that I think holds similar values to me and looks at things in a similar way. And that's really the reason why we're doing this interview in the first place, because I think there's a lot of things we have in common. Here's my first question for you, Peter. Tell me about your relationship with outdoors and nature. How would you describe that?
I feel like as soon as you just asked me that question, I had this this physiological response where my body just like dropped in a little further, and I just my breath just connected a little deeper, and this wave of calm just washed over my body, even just thinking about being out in nature. I mean, I had the great fortune of growing up going to summer camp, and the camp that I went to was a pretty scrappy summer camp. It was all about hiking and being outside, and we slept on the ground under tarps and hiked through rain and did many mountains. And so I just sort of fell in love with challenging myself in that way, but being so kind of reduced to my most basic form. And I think at this point in my life, being in nature, it provides such a powerful and much needed contrast, because most of my life is at an incredibly high intensity. It can be very cerebral, and like I live downtown Toronto, and I'm hustling at a high intensity all the time, and putting a lot of pressure on myself, and trying to do all these things in the world. And then I go out onto the trail and I flip a switch, and while I'm incredibly connected when I'm in the city, I am completely disconnected. Certainly over the last couple of years, during the pandemic, I really fell in love with going to Algonquin Park here in Ontario, and my friend Kat and we would just go and I would literally be in meetings like up until the trailhead, and then completely disconnect for 4 days, and it just like my whole body would reconfigure itself, and it felt like a return to self. If I were to sum up my connection to nature in one sentence, that would be it. It's this return to self.
I like that. So I have an experience from my personal, like when I was a youth, where I hadn't figured it out yet. Like I hadn't really figured out that I enjoyed nature to the degree that I do now. That's for sure. Like it took me one experience in particular where my father forced me to go on a camp. There was a shift that happened on that camp. I figured out that I was insignificant, and in that moment of learning that I was insignificant, I suddenly went like, oh my goodness, this world is huge. Like, and there's so much. And it was a very happy moment. Can you identify a moment? It doesn't have to be the moment, but like a moment. Explore that moment for a second for me.
It's funny. I have a bit of an amalgam of moments that sort of come together, but I remember being at camp and like summer camp, and it was in the Adirondacks in upstate New York, and in the Adirondacks there's 46 peaks that are over 4,000 feet.
What?
And so you become a 46er by climbing all 46 of the mountains.
In Alberta, we have the 11,000ers. Sorry, similar. In Alberta, we have what are called the 11,000ers. Yeah. Yeah, not quite.
Well, that's much more impressive than 4,000 feet, but nevertheless, things are a little bit of a different landscape out east here. So at that time, in particular in my life, I was really actually out of shape. My parents were going through a divorce, and I had sort of dealt with that by kind of like eating my troubles as is normal that happens, and so my confidence level was quite low, and I remember being overwhelmed by these hiking trips, and I remember being on my way up the mountain and just thinking, what am I doing? like this is the worst thing I've ever done. Like, where my feet are blistered and it's raining, and like, using facilities out of nature, and just the whole thing. I was like, why? This is hell on earth. That's like, that was, and then you get to the top, and you look out, and you get above the tree line, and there's this breeze, and you kind of see where you've come from, and you just kind of see the stillness of it all and the beauty of it all, and this sense of being, this sense of presence, this sense of pride, this sense of awe would just come over me. And then I remember walking down and thinking, that was the best thing I've ever done. I'm gonna and that cycle would repeat itself, because sometimes I'd be on the next one, I'd be like, wow, why am I doing this again? And then eventually I just learned that on the other side of these sometimes really uncomfortable moments, but where I knew I was doing something that was sort of undeniable, it gave something to me. It was this grounding force to me, and eventually I started to just love that. And then I started to. It's not that climbing mountains is easy still, but I just feel joyful now when I do it, and now it feels like this, as I said, it feels like this return to self, this return to home, and I think it's kind of a good metaphor for life, right? We think that we just want to like sit on the couch and eat jelly beans and watch Netflix all day, and that would be paradise. But if you really think about that and how that would actually feel, and the meaning you might feel about your life, it would get old pretty fast.
Oh yeah.
And yet in life, when you do the harder things, and whether that's the difficult conversations or the things that you don't know how to do yet, or the big risks that you take, that's where the good stuff lies. And so I think nature just provides that in such abundance, and just the physiological effects of it are there too. I mean, just what does exercise and endorphins and all those things do for you, and breathing air and drinking water, and even like the meditativeness of right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, left. It just puts you into this flow state. I mean, there's just so much about it. Something that I always think about when I think about nature is like, if you walk pretty much any human being to the edge of the Grand Canyon, or to the top of some mountain, or even just a beautiful sunset or sunrise, like pretty much every human being on planet Earth is going to experience this sense of wellness and this sense of awe. And there's a universality in those moments that is not like, you don't need to tell somebody to be in awe of that. They just are. You don't need to tell somebody how beautiful a view is. They just know it. And so there's something in that universality that our body, our hearts, our souls know beyond what we can comprehend.
There's something that's occurring to me as you're speaking about what I have learned about nature, and it's really the ability to trust that will all happen. Having the confidence to be in nature in the first place, so that you feel, I know how to take care of myself. I know what to do if XYZ happens. That confidence, once those needs are often met, you suddenly you're like open to, okay, nature, bring it on. Like I'm here. I trust it's going to happen. Let's make it happen. That's just occurring to me now, that it's really a trust relationship with nature, and that first experience that you described is so similar to my own. It really was a grind to get up the mountain, and I completely hated all of that part of it. And then when it paid off, it was like the beginning of that trust. And it was kind of like, oh, okay. Years later, do another one. Oh, here it is again. Even sometimes now I find it, I'm kind of like, I have to like trust that, like, yeah, I feel awful right now. And is nature really gonna fix that? I don't know. And I have to like almost like go, hang on a second. You know the answer to that already. Just go and do it. You'll experience it when you go out there.
It's funny how what I'm thinking of too, it's like there is this fundamental, I love that you sort of overlay it with, Maslow's hierarchy of needs or whatever. It's like once that baseline is like, all right, I'm going to eat, and like, I'm not going to be eaten or whatever. And like, I know how to survive, then you can kind of surrender and have that trust. But something that I was thinking of as you were talking too, is this, like, there's this basicness that is brought about, where drinking water from your canteen water feels like a miracle, and lying down and sleeping in your tent at night, I mean, it's like I don't know, my partner and I were shopping for a new bed recently, and you're like, oh, was this one comfortable, or oh, this one has this in it, and you're getting all like nitpicky about a bed, and yet you're basically like, when you go to sleep on your thermarest on a tree root, you're like, this is the best sleep of my life. And you don't have all the fancy stuff, but you just appreciate this concept of sleep, and you appreciate this concept of water, and whatever food you're eating, it tastes so good. I remember coming home from summer camp and like insisting that my mom like buy some of this food that we had eaten on the hiking trail. Like, at that time it was like Spam and this kind of stuff, and then I'm eating it, at the kitchen table. I was like, this doesn't taste as good as I remember.
It never does. It never does.
So I'm sure if I whipped up some like backpacker's pantry or whatever, I mean, that stuff's pretty good, but like, I wouldn't appreciate it as much if I cooked it for dinner tonight versus what that tastes like when you've got that warm bowl of food, and it's maybe a little chilly outside, and you got your headlamp on or whatever, and you're just sort of treasuring these basic elemental things. I just think that is there's like an uncomplicatedness to it that is just so, I love that.
Real estate and camping food are the same, because it's all about location.
That's funny. Yeah.
If you were to kind of strip down the essentials to have like the best outdoor experience, like if you're kind of like, okay, what are the ingredients to make a good outdoor experience? You and I have spent some time with young people on a camp that we do together called Faces. In that, we kind of have certain things that we make sure happens. But if you were to kind of put in your own words, what would those ingredients be for an effective outdoor experience?
I think having like a hiking partner, like one, I would say like one to three. Most of my hiking is my friend Kat and I, just the two of us, but every now and then there'll be one person or two other people. But I did do a month by myself on the Appalachian Trail, and as conceptually cool as that was, there was a part of me that couldn't get to the place that you described earlier of just feeling that sense of safety and calm, and perhaps somebody else could, but I'd come upon a beautiful stream or some little rapids or whatever, and I was like, oh, I don't know that I want to go swimming by myself in the middle of nowhere. Whereas when you're with a friend, it's like, okay, yeah, let's jump in. Or when things get a little dark or challenging, or like to have somebody that you're with, that you're kind of witnessing you're witnessing each other in the experience. I'm thinking of last summer, my friend Kat and I, we had I don't know, it was supposed to be like a 15-kilometer hike in, and it's sort of this gradual climb to this lake. And I mean, the heavens opened upon us, and had we submerged ourselves in a lake, we wouldn't have been any more wet. Like, it was just,
okay.
Like, it was just so, we got hammered by rain. Like, I couldn't believe it. I've been hiking my whole life, and I've never been rained on that hard before. I mean, like, we had gaiters and everything, but it just soaked through our pants. We were walking in sloshy boots, and when the site that we were supposed to get to had been washed out and flooded, and so we had to hike, extra distances, and like, just to witness each other in that experience, as hard as it was, there's something special about that. So you just couldn't ever explain to somebody. They'd be like, oh wow, that sounds intense. But Kat and I, we will forever know what that was like. So I think it's really nice to have the right hiking partner. It has to be the right person. I think that would be certainly key. And then I also think, for me, like, I want to go on a trip where I'm challenged. Like, I want to cover some distance. I want to get to the place that most people don't get to. I feel like part of my satisfaction of being out in nature is the push, and part of what makes me sleep so well and enjoy the water so much and enjoy the view so much is that push. So, great partner, something challenging, and I mean, it's nice to hike in beautiful places. So
and I think you touched on that earlier, the getting a sense of awe or perspective, right? Because I think that's a key ingredient. Is like, can you get to that moment of feeling that sense of awe? It doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest mountain or the most. You know what I mean? Like, I'll give an example for myself. I'm in a place in Lethbridge. Lethbridge is not the most exciting place in the whole world, but there are some pretty cool river valleys, and there's at first glance you're kind of like, well, there's nothing there really, but you start going in close, and that sense of awe comes pretty strong, and you start to see, like, man, there are so many little animals that live here. Then you're going closer, you get down to like 1 square foot, and you're like, look at all the things that live in just this little square foot. And then as you get closer, like, there's that perspective of how things exist and live, and thinking about that, and then being open to learning from it. Yeah, I think that's for me, that's one of the keys for my own growth, and I think that connects to what you said earlier.
The rest of the ingredient list for me is just having some yummy food, and I pack a guitar with me. I actually have a little guitarlele, which any lightweight enthusiast would gasp, but it's worth it. It's worth it to have that instrument. So being able to play music, and another thing that I've discovered is the lightweight camping chair, which has brought me a lot of joy. Again, the lightweight enthusiasts would gasp at that too, but those are my two indulgences.
When you and I went out, because we went on a trip to the Stanley Mitchell hut in Yoho, and I believe you brought your guitar there. I don't know if it was the guitarlele, but it was a smaller. Maybe it was the same one.
No, I actually, that was a bigger one. I've since gotten a smaller one because that one's really heavy.
Oh, okay. I don't think outdoor enthusiasts would gasp. But I just remember that feeling of like, well, first of all, I got to like listen to some. This is before you'd release an album, and I was like listening to all of your new stuff. But it was just so calming, really, to go to a place where I love. And sit and be surrounded by the stuff that I love, and then you did a performance of "What a Wonderful World" by Louis Armstrong.
Yeah.
What a wonderful world.
That was like really meaningful to me to hear that and then see it, and I got to film it too, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was awesome. We were on the Moraine.
Yeah. Ended up going back there with family later and showing them all that stuff. So
nice.
I really enjoyed that. I know one of the things that you have as part of your philosophy is the idea of leaning towards things that are sometimes uncomfortable. Intentionally. I'm curious, like my own personal philosophy around being an OAF, right? To be somebody that recognizes that you don't have it all figured out, that you don't know everything. Are those two related somehow? And could you maybe connect the dots there to that? Yeah.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. I think it sort of dovetails with what I was talking about earlier, where part of the foundation of being out in nature is doing this uncomfortable thing, and that's where you kind of figure out what you're made of, and you realize how actually resilient and strong and capable you are. And I think part of my life as an artist, as a songwriter, like you have to constantly live in this uncomfortable place where every time you're trying to create something, whether in my instance it's a song, but for you, whether it's a video or somebody else who's a visual artist or whatever that might be, you're always trying to create something that doesn't exist yet. And so you don't know what it is, you don't know what it's supposed to be, you don't know if it's good. As you're working on it, you don't know if it's finished. There's nobody to tell you. You have to follow your instincts and get frustrated because like this is not there, but I don't know how to get it there, and so you have to just constantly be willing to be uncomfortable and be okay with that. And that's the place where if you're willing to sit there for long enough or keep figuring it out for long enough, then you can have those little breakthroughs. And to connect it to this idea of not having it all figured out, I think that's like life is change. And if you look at any living thing, or if you just observe the seasons, or nature shows us this every day. Like, if we want to be alive, we have to change. If we want to be alive, we have to be dying and being reborn every day. Our cells are dying and shedding. Like, that to me is the essence of being alive, is allowing yourself to die and live in every moment. And so I think that what the word that comes to mind for me is the sense of humility, where you want to be in this, like, if you had it all figured out, then you're done. It's like, no, that band I listened to and when I was 16 is the only band of all time, and that music will forever be the greatest music. It's like, well, maybe there's some other music that you could get into, or I won't speak for anybody else, but I want to stay in a place of curiosity, a place of not knowing it all, because for me that means that I'm alive. It means I have somewhere to go. It means that there's something that I don't know yet, and I'm gonna figure out these things that I don't know. And then once I uncover one of those things, there's a whole bunch of things that will reveal themselves from there, and then there'll be a new list of things that I don't know. And as each of those things happen, I'm constantly growing and learning. I mean, it's kind of like rock climbing, right? You're like standing at the bottom and you find your first handhold, and then you climb up a little bit and you think, oh, like this, I'm out of handholds here. I can't possibly go any further. And you know, that's the view that you have. But then you kind of wrestle with it. You work your way through it, and then you find this other handhold, or maybe you step up on a little thing, and all of a sudden there's a whole new possibility to you, and there's this whole new view. And every step of the way on your way up, like, you didn't know what was possible there, and you didn't know what the view was going to look like. And you're gaining confidence as you go. So maybe you're willing to not know for a little longer. You're a little less quick to give up, because you know that, okay, well, I didn't give up at that other point where I thought I wasn't going to be able to figure it out, and I figured it out and discovered these new things. And so it all just kind of connects for me, where I feel like being in this state of curiosity, of awe, of just like not having it all figured out. That to me is the heart of creativity, of exploration, and ultimately of aliveness.
Yeah. Wow. That's there's some new stuff there that I don't know if I've heard you say before, or I've heard it phrased that way before, which is really, you know, for myself in my own life right now, that's really cool to hear. One of the bits of advice that I sometimes give to beginners or someone who's starting out is that, you know, you are your own worst enemy. Despite that voice in your head that says, you know, you can't do it, the first key to moving forward is to just kind of let yourself be empty. Whatever it is that you've got going on that's kind of in the way right now, just let that drain away, and be open to what could happen. And I think that very much connects to what you just said. If you were to give some advice to someone who's maybe new to coming into the outdoors, who hasn't really explored, if you could talk to yourself, teenage Peter Katz, who is, you know, struggling or kind of doesn't believe all this hooey, I don't know if I can go along. What would you say to that person that's starting out, that needs the advice? Yeah, what would you say to that person?
I wonder what I could have possibly said to myself. And it's interesting because you and we both do this work with teenagers in the summer, and sometimes, often, they're not so enthusiastic about having a giant pack on their back and going straight up. And in some ways, I think I might quote our good friend Dave Orr and just say, trust the process. I might encourage them to, you know, like, if they don't trust themselves, like, trust me. I promise I won't lead you astray. I've been studying facilitation a lot over the last year and a bit, and just really, really getting deep into experiential learning, and just kind of understanding how one creates belonging within groups and all these kind of things. And I think one of the biggest teachings that I've had in my learning over the last little while is this idea that the most important thing for us to do as a teacher, as a mentor, as an educator, and anything along those lines, is to actually be what it is that we are teaching. And so that's more important than any words that are coming out of our mouths. So I would say in that moment, I might just channel my embodiment of how much I appreciate being in nature with that person, or I might just embody that and let the rest just kind of do the work.
Ooh, yeah. That echoes back to what I had kind of discovered in this conversation earlier. The idea of trust and going, do I trust nature right now? And if I do, then I show that I do. And I help you, whoever this person you're helping, hey, trust nature here. You got to trust me that I'm trusting it right now and that I know it's going to pay off. And if you can learn to do that, you absolutely could find that for yourself. Yeah, I think that connects well to that idea.
And I think I would also, I would manage my own anxiety around I'm thinking back to specific moments. Again, you and I, the main hike that we do, right, where we take the kids up it's like an 11-kilometer hike or whatever it is, and it's not a lightweight hike. It's pretty challenging. And I remember there was one woman who was volunteering. And she got to the base camp, and she turned to me and she said, "I delivered 2 kids, and that was harder." And I said, "I don't know what that's like, but that's a big statement."
Wow.
So nevertheless, but I remember there was one girl in particular who just was hating every second and was traveling at very slow speeds. And I was session lead, so I was at the very back. And I remember just in my mind, I had like anxiety around, because I was telling her basically like, trust this, trust the process. Yep. But I was like, is this actually gonna work, or is she just gonna hate it the whole way? Mm-hmm. And she basically hated it the entire way. And then she got there, and then everything changed. And I actually have her picture of her and I on the top of the mountain. It's not in this room, but when I walk down my stairs, there's a picture of her and I on the top of that mountain. In some ways, just a reminder to me of the power of it. Because, I mean, there's a longer story I could tell you about a moment I had with her on the way up, and just how transformative it was for her. And I'm still in touch with her 7 years later, and she still tells me about how transformative that moment was. So,
that's so cool.
So I think, if we are somebody who's trying to encourage others, we sort of have to like, don't pull the emergency parachute too quickly. Like manage your own anxiety, just to be in the moment and hold space for that person's fears or their challenges. And it's like, it's okay. Like, yes, it is hard, and it's okay.
I don't have any other questions to ask, but I just wanted to give you kind of the last word here. This would be a good chance to say it.
The thing that comes to mind is just wanting to give you some love and appreciation, and I have such fond memories of our times together and of that trip. I mean, I won't talk about our sleep in Stanley Mitchell Hut when you were snoring like this close to my face, and I wanted to strangle you.
I really appreciate you not talking about that.
Yeah. So yes, I don't recommend that you sardine yourself in a hut with 30 other hikers and have your dear friend's face this close to you snoring. But beyond that,
start questioning life decisions, and
yeah. But I mean, I would do that. I would do that whole thing again in a heartbeat. As I want to give you some love and appreciation, and I really admire you back, and I when I first met you, like, I just experienced you as this like wise, knowledgeable nature guide guy, and I was like, wow, this guy's cool, and I just wanted to learn from you, and I kind of paid close attention to the things that you said, and I just think you've given a lot of people the gift of nature.
Well, I appreciate all of that, Pete. It's been a pleasure to do this interview with you and to connect again, and I hope the people who watch my channel get a sense of kind of the power of what we're talking about here, because I think it's like Peter said, it's transformative. It really changes so much more than just simply, oh, nature's cool. It's much farther beyond that. It's life changing, it has the power really to go really deep down to the core of who we are. Thank you so much, Pete, and thank you for being willing to do this.
It's totally my pleasure. Thanks for doing what you're doing, and yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So kudos.
Come down, come down, come down from the cloud you're in. I see what's happening. Won't let it this